Hey everyone, welcome back. If this is your first time joining us, we're so glad you're here. And if you've been with us from the beginning, you already know what kind of night this is going to be.
This is the Black Crow Podcast, where we read real stories sent in by people just like you. People who've seen something, heard something, or felt something they couldn't explain.
Tonight's episode is called Whispers in the Fog, because sometimes the world gets quiet just before something shows itself. Sometimes it's not the darkness that scares us, it's what moves inside it.
We'll hear from a park ranger who met a woman in the mist, a new mother who woke to a warning, a man who found a letter in a graveyard, and more.
5 true stories. 5 reasons to double-check your doors. And never ignore the quiet.
We're your hosts. I'm David.
And I'm April.
This is episode 3, Whispers in the Fog.
Our first letter tonight comes from Daniel, a longtime park ranger who worked in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. He says this happened nearly 10 years ago, but it still haunts him. In the early mornings and every time the fog rolls in. Hi, April and David. I'm not usually someone who talks about ghosts. I've spent most of my life outdoors, hiking, working in remote forests, watching the seasons change. I've always believed that nature, while wild and mysterious, follows its own logic. But what I saw that morning, I still don't know how to explain. It was late October, right before dawn. I was doing a solo patrol on a trail that had been closed the week before due to a series of small landslides. It was the kind of morning where you can see your breath, even after moving around for an hour, and the fog was so thick, it looked like the forest had been erased. The silence was total. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of my boots and the occasional drip of water falling from the branches. Then I saw her, a woman, maybe 30 feet ahead of me on the trail. She was barefoot, wearing a long white dress, not hiking gear, not even weather appropriate. Her arms hung at her sides and her long hair was loose and tangled. At first, I thought it was a lost hiker. I called out. She didn't flinch, didn't turn. She just started walking away from me, slow, calm steps, deeper into the fog. I followed her. I had to. Maybe she was in shock. But no matter how far I walked, I never got closer. It was like she floated just out of reach. My calls got louder, more urgent, and still she didn't react. Then my radio started acting up, just static. That trail had patchy service, but this was different. It felt wrong. She finally stopped just before a bend in the trail, a blind curve. She turned to face me, and I swear to you, her eyes were gone. There was nothing there, just 2 dark hollows where eyes should be. And something, I don't know how else to say it, something alive was flowing out of them. Like the fog wasn't around her, it was coming from her. She didn't say a word. She vanished. Right there. 1 second, she was standing on the path. The next, the space was empty. I stood frozen for a few seconds, then stepped forward, just instinct. And that's when I saw it. The ground had collapsed, a sheer drop-off where the trail had given way. If I had kept following her, if I'd taken just 1 more step, I would have gone right over. I never saw her again. There were no footprints, no broken branches, no logical explanation. I don't think she was trying to scare me. I think she stopped me from walking to my death. And to this day, when I patrol that same stretch of trail, I always whisper a quiet thank you into the fog. Daniel.
I don't know what gives me more chills. The black hollow eyes, or the fact that she saved his life.
It's like she was tethered to that place, but not in anger. Almost like she stayed behind to keep others from making the same mistake.
It makes you wonder how many tragedies we narrowly avoid and never even realize it.
Exactly. And that brings us to our next letter, a story that hits much closer to home. Because what do you do when the thing in the dark doesn't want to protect you? It wants to whisper in your ear.
Our next letter comes from Vanessa, who wrote to us from a quiet suburb near Madison, Wisconsin. This story takes place during the first few months after she gave birth to her daughter, a time when she was exhausted, vulnerable, and not quite alone. Dear Black Crow, the first months after having a baby feel like a dream, or maybe a fog. Everything's upside down. You sleep in pieces, you wake to every sound, and the line between dreaming and waking becomes paper thin. That's probably why I didn't trust what I saw at first. It was a little after 3 a.m. I was lying in bed, not fully asleep, but not fully awake, listening to the baby monitor. My husband was snoring softly beside me, and a faint orange glow from the hallway nightlight spilled across the floor. That's when I noticed the figure. It was standing at the foot of my bed, tall, completely still. Dressed in something dark, it looked like a coat or maybe a cloak that seemed to move even though the room was still. There was no face, just a human shape where a face should have been. I thought I was dreaming, or maybe it was sleep paralysis. I'd heard of that before. I couldn't move, couldn't even blink. I tried to will myself awake, but it started moving. It walked to my side of the bed, slow, soundless steps, and leaned in inches from my face. I expected silence, but it whispered, "She's not alone in that crib." I jerked up, gasping, my heart pounding. The room was empty. My husband was still asleep. I didn't even stop to put on slippers. I ran straight to the nursery. My baby was there, peaceful, breathing softly, but the window was open, and there were muddy footprints on the carpet. Only one set, coming from the window, leading out. I called the police. They searched the property. Nothing. No forced entry. No sign anyone had been inside. But I know what I saw, what I heard. I installed cameras the next morning. They never picked up anything strange, but I moved out of that house 6 months later. And to this day, I never ever leave a window unlocked at night. Vanessa.
She's not alone in that crib. That line is going to haunt me tonight.
I got goosebumps just reading it. And the footprints, just one set, in and out. I don't know what's worse, the idea that it was something human, or that it wasn't.
And you can tell Vanessa still carries that fear. Even after moving, she never leaves a window unlocked. I wouldn't either.
From haunted bedrooms to haunted graves, our next letter comes from Elijah, who used to tend one of the oldest cemeteries in Charleston.
The kind of place where Spanish moss hangs from the trees and the dead have a tendency to linger. Hello, guys. I used to work the early shift at a cemetery just outside Charleston. The place had been around since before the Civil War. Old graves, weather-worn stones, cast-iron fences. Tourists would come during the day, but early mornings belonged to me. I liked the peace of it. One morning, after a bad storm, I was clearing branches in the oldest part of the cemetery, a forgotten little corner where the stones barely stood straight. That's when I noticed something sticking out from between two crooked graves. It was a letter, old parchment, sealed with a blob of red wax, just one word written across the front. Forgive. I probably shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside, it said, "I know what I did. I know you still watch. If I return what I took, will you let me rest? Please. I'm so tired." That night, I had a dream, a vivid one. I was standing in that same spot in the cemetery, only it looked older, foggy, like time had slipped backward. A woman stood between the graves. Black veil, pale hands. She was holding a small wooden box, and she didn't say a word, just pointed at me. Then she whispered, "Bring it back." I woke up in a sweat. The next morning, I went back to that spot. I didn't expect anything, but there it was, the box from the dream, Real, small, rotted, barely intact. Inside was a piece of bone wrapped in faded velvet and a silver locket. The initials on it matched one of the oldest graves nearby. I buried the box beneath that gravestone, said a prayer, even though I didn't know who I was praying for. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night, and I never dreamed of her again. Elijah.
You know, people always say, let the dead rest, but sometimes the dead are begging for it.
That dream, with the woman in the veil pointing at him, I don't think that was a dream at all.
He did the right thing. Whatever that box was, whoever it belonged to, Elijah gave it peace.
But peace isn't always what's waiting.
This next letter comes from Mia, who used to live in a remote farmhouse in Idaho. What began as a quiet life in the country turned into something she couldn't explain and could no longer ignore. Dear Black Crow, I moved into the old farmhouse after my divorce. I wanted peace, quiet, a fresh start. The house sat on 10 acres, surrounded by fields and pine trees. My closest neighbor was a mile down the road. At first it was perfect. Then my dog, a German shepherd named Sam, started growling at the living room window every night around 10 p.m. Not barking, just growling. Low, steady, eyes locked on the darkness outside. I figured it was deer or coyotes. Then one night, he growled even after I'd closed the curtains. That same night, I was brushing my teeth. The bathroom mirror reflected the living room behind me, and for a split second, I saw it. A face pressed against the window glass from the outside. I turned so fast I nearly slipped. I ran to the window. Nothing there. No tracks in the snow. No marks. Just cold glass and my own breath fogging it up. But then it kept happening. Some nights I'd catch a glimpse of that same pale, expressionless face. Other nights, I'd hear 3 soft knocks at the back door, always around 3 a.m. Once, I woke up and found the front door was unlocked. I never leave it unlocked, but the final straw? I came home one afternoon, opened the curtains, and saw muddy handprints on the inside of the living room window. That was it. I sold the house that spring. I live in the city now. Lots of people, lots of lights. But sometimes, when I drive past old farmhouses out in the country, I get that feeling in my spine. Like someone's still watching from the other side of the glass. Mia.
Okay. Muddy handprints inside the window? Nope. I'm out.
And her dog knew. Animals always know. Sam tried to warn her every single night.
That face, the knocks, the unlocked door. Whatever it wasn't trying to get in. It already had.
From an old farmhouse to a late-night shift at a gas station, our final story tonight brings us to Salem, Oregon.
Because sometimes, the scariest thing isn't what you see, it's what you hear. After midnight.
Our final letter tonight comes from Mark, who was working overnight shifts at a small convenience store just outside Salem, Oregon. He says what started as a prank quickly turned into something much darker. Dear Black Crow, the overnight shift is its own kind of quiet. You see people at their strangest, the tired, the restless, the ones who don't want to go home. It started with a phone call, no one on the line, just breathing. I figured it was a drunk customer messing around, hung up, thought nothing of it. Then it happened again and again, always after midnight, always from different numbers. Sometimes I could hear whispering, like someone speaking from far away. Sometimes just the breathing. One night, the voice finally said something in a whisper. I'm closer than you think. I checked the store cameras. No one outside, no strange cars, nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling. When I walked to my car after my shift, I found long scratches across the driver's side door. And on the driver's seat, a note. I'm watching. I called the police. They told me to stay alert. I changed my number, switched shifts, moved to a new town a few months later. But even now, every once in a while, just past midnight, my phone rings, and there's no one on the other end. Mark.
That lingering phone call. Years later. No voice, no breathing. Just silence.
Some things really do follow you, don't they?
And not everything needs a reason. Some hauntings don't end with a final act. They just continue. Tonight's stories took us deep into the fog, through windows and whispers, and to places the past refuses to let go. And next week, we're heading underground.
Old tunnels, forgotten basements, places where the light doesn't reach, and something might still be listening.
Until then, stay safe, stay curious.
And if you see something that shouldn't be there, write us.
Tonight, we stood at the edge of a trail. We watched from behind a curtain. We listened to warnings whispered in the dark.
Each of these stories came from listeners just like you. Ordinary people who witnessed something they couldn't explain and decided not to keep it to themselves.
So if you've had a moment like that, something strange, something real, don't hold it in.
Go to blackcrowpodcast.com and send us your story. Long or short, written or recorded, we read everything. And yours could be featured in an upcoming episode.
We believe the more we share, the more we understand, even if we don't always have the answers.
Next week, we descend into the places the light forgot, basements, tunnels, and what's buried beneath.
Until then, lock your windows, trust your dog, and if the fog comes too thick tonight, don't follow it.